Erythroxylon coca, a South American mountain shrub whose long and intimate association with man dates back at least 2,000 years. This close association has developed because the leaves of the coca shrub contain an alkaloid substance that, in the words of one ancient supporter, satisfies the hunger, gives new strength to the weary, and makes the unhappy forget their sorrows. This ancient wonder drug is cocaine. It has been worshipped by some, damned by others, touted as the perfect cure-all for ills of every kind, and legislated against as a vicious killer drug. Today, cocaine has become, once again, the in drug. And once again, it has become the center of a growing storm of controversy. Cocaine. Is it cure-all or killer? What lies behind the myths and misconceptions that have helped to make it, for upwards of 2 million Americans, the newest dream drug, the perfect high-class high? According to ancient legend, it all began long, long ago when the divine son of the sun, Manco Capac, gave the Incas the wondrous coca leaf to help sustain them in the harsh, forbidding Andes mountains that they called home. The Incas soon discovered what other Indian tribes had already learned, that chewing the leaves of the coca did amazing things to mind, mood, and body. In gratitude, the Incas elevated coca to a living divinity and surrounded it with all sorts of rituals and ceremonies, like stuffing the mouths of the dead with it and generously dousing those who would soon join the dead by being sacrificed to the gods. But the coca leaf was for the living, too. And although the Inca ruling class tried hard to keep the supply of coca for its own use, it inevitably found its way into the hands and mouths of almost everyone. When Francisco Pizarro and his Spanish conquistadores took over the vast Inca Empire in 1536, they also took over the supply of coca leaves. At first, the conquerors banned coca chewing as the work of the devil, but that soon changed when they realized that, without their leaf, the Indians could no longer work effectively in the mines. And since the taking of precious metals was the first concern of the Spaniards, they not only lifted the ban on coca so the Indians who chewed it could work longer and harder, eat less, and perhaps even forget the misery of their enslavement, but they also turned the production of coca into a highly profitable state monopoly that lasted for 300 years. During those 300 years, other crops from the New World, like coffee and tobacco, became immensely popular in Europe, but the unique qualities of coca somehow remained undiscovered. Probably because what little coca leaf reached Europe usually lost most of its potency during the long trip. Yet tales of the amazing leaf kept filtering back to Europe, from a Swiss naturalist named von Tschudi, who had chewed it himself in 1838, from an Italian doctor named Mantegazza, who practiced medicine in Peru during the 1850s and had observed its effects firsthand, and from other respected and respectable travelers to Peru who had themselves experienced its potent powers. Then, sometime around 1860, a German, Dr. Alfred Niemann, isolated coca's active alkaloid, turned it into a pile of sparkling white crystals, and called it cocaine. For the next 20 years or so, cocaine remained nothing more than a laboratory curiosity. And then suddenly, it became the sensation of the medicine cabinet, the magic cure-all for every ill known to man. In 1883, a German army doctor named Theodor Aschenbrandt gave cocaine to some soldiers who had collapsed from exhaustion and reported, with some amazement, that they got up immediately and rejoined their regiments. In 1884, a somewhat depressed young psychiatrist named Sigmund Freud dissolved a little cocaine in water, drank it, and raved about its exhilaration and lasting euphoria, and was soon using cocaine as a cure for his patients' psychoses and depressions, as a treatment for their stomach disorders and their asthma, even as an aphrodisiac. By 1885, doctors in Europe and America had discovered cocaine's usefulness as an anesthesia and were using it in surgery. That same year, the American pharmaceutical firm Parke Davis and Company jumped on the cocaine bandwagon by declaring that it would take the place of food, make the coward brave, the silent eloquent, and free the victims of alcohol and opium habits from their bondage. In fact, all over Europe and America, people were swallowing pills, sipping teas, spooning down tonics, sniffing powders, smoking cigarettes, and smearing on creams and lotions with one ingredient in common: cocaine. Meanwhile, back in France, a shrewd Corsican chemist named Angelo Mariani was well on his way to becoming a millionaire by selling a bottled nostrum he called Vin Mariani, a tasty concoction of Bordeaux wine laced with cocaine. His potent brew quickly became the favorite tonic of the fashionable international set and drew volumes of testimonials to its unique qualities from, among others, the kings of Greece, Sweden, and Serbia, Popes Pius X and Leo XIII, the Grand Rabbi of France, and American presidents Grant and McKinley. Not to be outdone, an Atlanta, Georgia pharmacist named John Stith Pemberton offered for sale his own version of Mariani's tonic, a preparation he called French wine cola, ideal nerve and tonic stimulant. The next year, 1886, Pemberton eliminated the wine, substituted cola nut extract with its caffeine, and changed the name of his cocaine-laced tonic to Coca-Cola. For the next 20 years or so, it seemed that most of the civilized world was awash in cocaine. Bartenders slipped it into whiskey to give it that extra kick. Thomas Alva Edison invented under its influence. The Toronto Lacrosse Club used it and won the world championship. Arthur Conan Doyle's famous fictional detective, Sherlock Holmes, injected a 7% solution of it. Well-to-do clients used it in fashionable cocaine parlors. Itinerant peddlers sold it from their wagons throughout the Wild West. And everywhere, drugstores, grocery stores, general stores, and mail-order houses stocked it, in one form or another, in an amazing variety of products. But rumblings about cocaine were starting to be heard. As early as 1886, a prominent German doctor named Emil Erlenmeyer called cocaine the third scourge of the human race, after alcohol and morphine. A few years later, Freud himself began having second thoughts about cocaine when he used it to cure a friend's morphine addiction, only to see him develop a cocaine psychosis and die. By 1891, some 400 severe cases of cocaine intoxication and 13 deaths from cocaine poisoning had been reported, spurring further concern that the wonder drug might not be quite so wonderful after all. Showing the same disregard for factual evidence, the rage for cocaine suddenly turned into a rage against it. In America, racists led the anti-cocaine campaign by luridly picturing the crazed dope fiend as a black, although the most frequent abusers of cocaine, perhaps 30% of the nation's so-called cocainists, were those who had easiest access to it, doctors and dentists. Sensationalized, and often distorted, articles, stories, and exposés about the cocaine menace aroused public opinion across the country. Under pressure from Southern politicians, the manufacturers of Coca-Cola removed cocaine from their drink in 1903. In 1905, the development of a new synthetic anesthesia, procaine, cut sharply into the medical use of cocaine. In 1906, Congress passed the first Pure Food and Drug Act. By expressly preventing the interstate shipment of any food or drink containing cocaine, it effectively eliminated the drug from hundreds of preparations. During the next few years, most of the states passed laws regulating the use and distribution of cocaine, although many of them took no similar action to control the far more dangerous opiates. And then, in 1914, Congress passed the Harrison Drug Act, which banned cocaine along with the opiates, even though it misclassified cocaine as a narcotic, a depressant, instead of properly calling it a stimulant. With the passage of the Harrison Act, cocaine had swung full circle, from wonder drug to illicit drug, with its use confined by price, by conventionality, by legality, to the world of the adventurous and daring super-rich, the bohemian world of art, music, literature, and show business, and the criminal world. Those narrow markets were cut even further when amphetamines became available in 1932, much cheaper, more accessible, and just as potent as cocaine, with longer-lasting effects. They became the new in-drug. Until the mid-1960s, when the growing number of speed freaks led to a federal crackdown on the amphetamine black market, along with sharply higher amphetamine prices. At about the same time, heroin and LSD were being perceived, even by abusers, as dangerous drugs. And marijuana, once the symbol of youthful rebellion, was becoming more and more entrenched as a social drug for all ages, even though it was still illegal. And so, by the beginning of the 70s, cocaine made a comeback, and the trickle of snow suddenly became a blizzard. And now, new myths and misconceptions, as dangerous as the old ones, are helping to make cocaine, once again, the in drug. But this time around, it is clear that the drug behind the myth is not the fantasy drug of dreams. Instead, it may well turn out to be the stuff of nightmares.